Good morning and welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Director of Social Media for HAR, and I'm very pleased this morning to welcome back to the program HAR President and CEO, Bob Hale. Welcome back, Bob.
Hey, buddy. Great to be here, Christina.
Yes, we love closing out the year with you. This is, I think, maybe the third or fourth year in a row that we do this with you, but it's always good to hear from you. We get a recap of what happened and also a look into what might be happening next year. So we're very excited to have you back.
Super. Good to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, I want to let our audience know that this week's Member Focus Monday and HAR On the Move podcast are sponsored by Artavia, a new home community in Conroe. Stay tuned to the end. You'll see a quick video that they sent over. So, Bob, I know you really well. A lot of our members know you really well, but for the members who don't know you as well, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved at HAR?
Sure. I graduated from UT Law School. Pardon me, I'm stopped up this morning. I apologize. And I went to work as the lobbyist for the Texas Association of Realtors. 3 years later, I moved to Houston. I practiced law and served as HAR's lawyer and lobbyist for about 15 years. And then I became the CEO of HAR in 1988. And I'll tell you, it's been an amazing ride transforming HAR from, at that time, a very large but unknown association. No one knew anything about HAR. And we've transformed it into the second largest realtor association in the country, and without a doubt, the most progressive and recognized association in the country.
Absolutely.
So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of change.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your leadership through that time. It's amazing to hear. So let's just dive right in. One thing, I always like to bring up things that I see on social media, Bob. And recently, members paid their dues. And when they pay their dues, there's an option to invest in TreePAC. Now,
Right.
I noticed many members that were curious about the benefits of TreePAC. So can you tell us, what does TreePAC do and how does it benefit our members?
Well, let me start with the fact that HAR has done something no other association has even come close to. And that is, we have raised $1 million a year for TreePAC for the past 7 years. No other association in the country has even come close to raising $1 million once. And so my hat's off to Karen and Amber and their team of volunteers who do an incredible job. Mm-hmm. Now, following candidate interviews, all the candidates are interviewed to see who they're going to select. TreePAC then supports, and actually they support almost 50% Republican and 50% Democrat. I mean, it every year you look at it, and it comes down to almost exactly equal. And they support candidates who support two things. One, the Realtor Party, and two, private property rights. And what are some of the benefits of TreePAC? What have we been able to accomplish in large part due to TreePAC's influence? Mm-hmm. Well, number one, realtors were deemed essential during COVID thanks to Harris County Judge Hidalgo and her 4 commissioners. Unlike Dallas, for example, where realtors were not allowed to work during that period of time. And so while realtors in Houston were able to deal with their clients, show properties, do everything they needed to do, in Dallas it just shut down because their county judge wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So then TR passed a constitutional amendment that bans real estate transfer taxes. Mm-hmm. Some states, when you go to closing, you pay 5% of the sales price as a transfer tax, which is a huge impediment to the transfer of real estate. So that was an incredible thing that TR did. And they also defeated a vehicle tax, so every agent that owns their own vehicle doesn't have to pay an annual tax on that car, and defeated the tax on professional services. So if you if that had passed, you closed the transaction, you'd pay 8.25% tax on your commission. Mm-hmm. So those are just 4 of the things that I think we can be proud of that TreePAC did. Without TreePAC, I'm not sure any of those would have happened. So
Absolutely. The ability to work and saving money. I mean, that
Yeah,
it doesn't get more
what
important
can be
than
better,
that.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. So let's dive in also with a topic that
Sure.
I think is probably likely on the forefront of people's minds, and they like to get updates from you specifically on it. What is the status of the lawsuits that are taking place within the industry?
Well, first, let me start with what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
Sellers are suing NAR and major franchisors claiming they were not aware that they were paying the buyer agent compensation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even though in Texas, I think it's pretty well clearly spelled out. Buyers are also suing, claiming that a higher commission was paid to the buyer's agent because they could not negotiate that fee because the seller had already agreed to pay it. And they claim, but yeah, the seller agreed to pay it, but I'm actually paying it as part of the sales price. So that's the two types of lawsuits that are going on out there. Millions of homeowners across the country may be able to seek billions of dollars in damages for commissions they paid to buyer agents between 2015 and 2020. I mean, this is really a huge thing for the industry. Litigation could result in here's what could happen. Litigation could result in listing agents no longer being allowed to offer buyer agent compensation. So what does that mean? That means the buyer agent would need to seek compensation directly from the buyer, which is we all know is kind of standard in the commercial real estate business. Number two, there could be billions of dollars in damages, which I don't know that the industry has that kind of money to pay. So that's a second big issue. And then third, there could be no clear cooperation rule. And what that means is right now, if you take an office exclusive listing, you can promote that within your company to your agents, but nowhere else. You cannot put it on social media. You can't advertise it. You can't let anyone else know about it. That would do away with that. So agents would be allowed to advertise office exclusives, which they can't do now, which would create a lot of off market listings.
Yeah. And that could lead into other issues like fair housing and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of ramifications, no
yeah,
question.
absolutely. So, with that in mind, what are the biggest takeaways that you have for our members regarding these lawsuits? What can or should they be doing right now?
Well, here's what I hope we've always been doing, but if not, then today, good day to start. Be very transparent with your clients. What did you tell consumers about all the things you do to represent them? I mean, there's a whole list of things you're going to do, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller. Do you cover all of those so they know? All they know is you put a sign in the yard, you put it in MLS, you get a contract that closes, and man, I paid a lot of money. That's not the truth. The truth is you do so much that they have no idea about. What did you say about how you're paid? What did you say about how much you're going to be paid? What did you say about cooperation being in their best interest so that the listing agent, the buyer agent cooperate, which makes it a whole lot better? And then the main thing is how did you document that you did this? Because if you're involved in litigation and you're called to testify, you need to prove you did these things. Now, one thing HAR has done, NAR entered into agreement with the Department of Justice and required MLSs, if they have a public website like har.com, to disclose on every listing the buyer agent's compensation. And we've done that. And surprisingly, I've not heard a word from any agent or any consumer. So something that we had a little bit of concern about what would happen when that happened didn't happen. It just
Yeah.
nothing happened.
Okay.
So
Well, great. Thank you. So, kind of shifting gears here, there have been some financial shifts within the real estate market with different companies. So, what are your thoughts on the financial shifts that various companies have been making?
first, I would suggest that you do not pay attention to how I invest money in the stock market and real estate companies because I did a terrible job. I'm fixing to cover some of that. But the third quarter of 2022 saw billions of dollars in losses with almost every company in the industry cutting expenses, and typically that meant staff. Open Door, consider this, Open Door lost $1 billion in the third quarter.
Wow.
In one quarter, in 3 months, $1 billion. OfferPad lost 80 million. Redfin, the third largest of the big three iBuyers, decided to shut down its iBuying operation. So those are some major changes in the iBuyer piece. Brokerage has fared better. Anywhere, which is Realogy's new brand name, reported a profit of 55 million in the third quarter. EXP 4.4 million profit. Remax 100,000 profit. Douglas Elliman 12.8 million profit. And Compass suffered a loss of 154 million in the third quarter. Rocket Mortgage, its profits fell 93% year over year, even though it had a gain of 96 million. And Zillow lost $53 million in the third quarter. So there was a lot of activity, not necessarily positive, happening in the third quarter.
Okay. You mentioned a term earlier, exclusive content. We've
Yes.
seen some brokerages offering this. Can you explain to us what is that? What is exclusive
All right.
content?
Think about yourself. If you have Comcast, you used to get everything through the cable, through Comcast. Everything you wanted to watch was on there. Now, if you want to see a particular show, you have to pay Netflix, you have to pay Amazon Prime, you have to pay Hulu, you have to pay Disney, you have to pay on and on and on, Apple, because every one of those has something that you want to see. It may be one show, but you want to see it because that's exclusive content. It's exclusive to them. And the problem is with me, I sign up, I watch the series, it's over, I forget about it, and my credit card is billed every month, and I don't know how to undo it. And so that's exclusive content. So some brokerages realize consumers like that, and they're offering to do the same thing. So in the past, all the content was on Zillow, Realtor.com, HAR.com, but now walled gardens are being built to protect that data and make it exclusive to the particular broker.
So what could those office exclusives mean for our members down the road?
Well, let's look at what's happening right today. So I went on Compass, and I'm not saying this is bad. This is a business decision that every broker makes business decisions in their best interest. So Compass has what are called private exclusive listings. And I went on there and I searched, and it said 2,867 properties only on Compass. So those are exclusives. Now, how do you see those? Real easy. You contact a Compass agent who will show it to you. Then you look at Open Door, and they have Open Door exclusives. And those are properties they bought, fixed up, and now they're ready to sell them. They put them on on opendoor.com before they go into the MLS for 2 weeks to see if they can sell them without putting them in the MLS. Right now, Open Door is becoming the largest for sale by owner in the country. Pardon me. Let me give you an example. In Austin, 40% of Open Door exclusives never hit the MLS. So of all the Open Door exclusives that go on opendoor.com, 40% sell before they go into the MLS. And what does that mean? That means no buyer agent compensation. Often in HAR, Open Door has the second most active listings in the HR MLS, even though 50% of its listings start as exclusives on opendoor.com. So just imagine if they didn't do that, they put them all into HR's MLS, they would, I'm assuming, be the largest brokerage with listings of anybody. Now, the next thing is Eric Wu, who started Open Door, is no longer CEO, but he is overseeing Open Door exclusives. That's their new project. I mean, that's all their efforts going into that. So we know they have their own listings on Open Door, but now what are they doing? They're allowing owners, when they want to sell their home, put it on Open Door as an exclusive. Don't put it in the MLS first. What does that mean? That means you don't use a realtor, basically. So that's a new business model. I don't know if it's going to take off, but anyway, Eric Wu is running that, and so that's something that the industry will be watching very closely, I'm sure. And then CoStar, the newest player in the residential industry, which is the predominant player in commercial and in apartments. If you watch TV, you've seen apartments.com ads every night probably, and they own apartments.com. So they are the main force in commercial and in apartments. Now they're in residential, having both bought homes.com and HomeSnap. And they're spending right now $100 million to create local neighborhood exclusive content that will not be on Zillow, Realtor, or HR.com, only on Homes.com. So you're starting to see brokerages and portals realize maybe the Netflix, Amazon Prime model is the way to go. So I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good for consumers, but it's good for certain players, and that's free enterprise.
So we had a question come in, and this might be something that many members want some clarification on. Armando's asking, how can they offer these office exclusives? How is this allowed?
They could do it as long as they don't promote it outside outside their office or their brokerage. That's a settlement between the DOJ, I believe, and NAR.
Okay, very good. So you've mentioned a couple iBuying companies already today, in as we were discussing office exclusives. But iBuying is something that really shook up the industry a few years ago. What is the current status of iBuying?
Well, let's consider the fact Zillow lost a bunch of money and they got out of it. Okay, and if you look at Zillow as the number one portal, and Open Door is the number one iBuyer, they have formed a partnership, and they have a combined cash of between $4 and $5 billion. So they're sitting on a lot of money. They're the big players, and now instead of competing as they did, they're working together. And the partnership gives Zillow the ability to generate and monetize high quality seller leads. So those being consumers that are thinking about selling their home. Something get lost when Zillow offers was shut down last year. So what do I mean by that? A consumer will go to Zillow, possibly, to get to Open Door and let Open Door know, I'd like an offer from you. Now, typically, consumers don't accept that offer. I mean, that's just the way some do, some don't, but most don't. So what happens to that lead? Zillow has it now. And guess what they're going to do with it? They're going to sell it to one of the people on this call right now. It's a lead. It's a good quality lead because they know that seller is probably ready to do something. So that's why they're doing it. And then Open Door is doing it because it represents an incredible and perhaps the largest in the industry source of customer leads, because so many eyeballs, so many consumers go to Zillow nationwide. So it's to me, it's the perfect marriage. It's what they should have done to start with, and not if competed along the way. But anyway, they did. So you've got right now, iBuyers are basically Open Door and OfferPad because, as I said, Zillow and Redfin has dropped out. Then you got the power buyers who provide cash offers to buyers, or they help the buyer buy before they sell their house. So if you're a cash offer buyer, you're in a much better position than a buyer who's trying to get a mortgage or even has a mortgage. So those are Easy Knock, Homeward, Ribbon, Fly Homes, and RealSure, which is Anywhere's or Realogy's power buyer program. In fact, they have a billboard, I think in Denver, big billboard that says home buying does not have to suck. Contact anywhere for real sure, and we'll give you a cash offer. You can go in and get the house you want. So anyway, so here's the largest brokerage franchise getting into it as well. The interesting thing, all the companies I've mentioned are all members of HAR's MLS today. Mm. And then so how's it changing? Why does it matter? One thing is Open Door is working to reduce the buyer agent compensation. I believe it's in Atlanta. They started at 3%, went to 2.5, and now they're at 2.25. And they believe if they can cut that commission in every MLS by even about half a point, they can save tens of millions of dollars a year that'll go to their bottom line. And Zillow and Redfin both have ceased their iBuying program, as I said. And Open Door last year, to give you an idea, Open Door spent $120 million advertising just last year. So a lot of people go to that website.
Okay, thank you for that update. Bob, we've heard murmurings of a rental nation coming soon. What are your thoughts on the rental market, and how can our members prepare for that?
Well, let's go back to CoStar.
Okay.
They spend $500 million to promote apartments.com. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I can hardly turn on the TV without seeing apartments.com ad. And they're very good. They're very good. And you're going to start seeing that, I think, with homes.com very soon. It'll be the same type. So all their brands, whether it's commercial or apartments or residential, will probably have that same advertising look and feel to it. Then you consider more consumers today are searching the web to rent than to buy. So we know the majority of people looking for housing are looking for an apartment or a home to rent versus to buy, the majority. Then you look at investors purchased $42 billion worth of homes in the third quarter, even though that was down 30% from the previous quarter and 26% year over year. But then, so you think, well, good, it's going in the right direction, except you look at major players like JP Morgan Chase teaming up with Haven Realty Capital to jointly acquire $1 billion in single family rentals. So you're still seeing these major players buy up, actually sometimes an entire subdivision. Right now we're seeing builders build an entire subdivision to sell to a single investor. Why? It's a lot easier to sell to one person everything than to sell each home, have to market each home, negotiate each home, close each home. So it's a new world. It's just absolutely something we have never believed, a few years ago. So what should agents do? They should consider representing tenants who in the future will become their buyers. So if you can get to that homeowner early on and establish a relationship, prove your value, they're going to stick with you as long as you help them out. So that's something to consider. And when you look at rents of maybe $15,000 a month, that's the easiest money an agent could ever make. I mean, it's you get paid right away, and it's so simple. So think about that. And then we look at Zillow, Realtor and Homes spending a small fortune to acquire rental inventory to promote to consumers on their websites. Because they know if consumers are looking for rental properties more than buy properties, they got to have that inventory on their websites. And so that's something HAR will be doing next year, is trying to beef up our rental. And then we drive, that person to the realtor listings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Bob. So let's talk about 2023 a little bit. What industry changes do you anticipate next year?
Well, exclusive content for sure. We saw how Open Door and Compass will use exclusive content. We see CoStar now doing exclusive content. People like to search neighborhoods and then search homes. Okay, so CoStar realizes that. And that's why they're creating video content and media content for neighborhoods all over the United States. It'll only be on their website. They're spending $200 million right now, in addition to the $100 million for exclusive content, $200 million and 1,000 engineers to create an amazing website, which is homes.com. So that's going to be whereas homes.com has really not been a competitor to HAR.com, but that's about to change. The second thing is litigation. And so agent commissions in 2021 went above, so you don't want to get my ear thing, went above $100 billion, $100 billion in commissions. And that caught the attention of the DOJ, trial lawyers, and consumers. And so out of that came, we know what. And the intent of the litigation, as I said, is to eliminate offers of buyer compensation. So if the buyer wants an agent to represent them, they have to pay that agent billions of dollars in potential treble damages and loss of clear cooperation rule, which would lead to a lot more exclusive content in our industry. Then the third thing, I think, is sharing $5 billion of the agent commission. So what do I mean by that? Zillow's goal is to increase premier agent revenues by $1.5 billion in the next 3 years, for a total of about $3 billion. CoStar plans to grow residential revenue. Residential revenue is agent commissions, it's just another way of saying that, by $1 billion over the next few years. And don't forget, Realtor.com charges for leads also. So there's about $3 to $5 billion that those three players are looking to increase their revenue from the agent commissions. And then the fourth one, and truthfully, this may become the biggest issue in real estate in time, and that's climate change. In 2021, we saw a record number of weather-related events that each caused more than $1 billion in damages, much of which impacted residential real estate. 80% of Americans today say that climate change is very or extremely important to them, 80%. And 51% said recent disasters from hurricanes to wildfire were influencing their opinion as to where they would live. Here's the tricky thing. Insurance companies are pulling out of writing homeowners insurance, especially in Florida and in New York and California. In California, the two largest insurance carriers that write high-end, for high-end homes, so we're not writing anymore. We're going to pull out of it due to wildfires. We just can't sustain these losses. They're pulling out all over in Florida due to hurricane damage. With billions and billions of dollars, they don't have the money to pay it. And what's happening is you buy insurance from a company in Florida. Everything's great. Hurricane hits. You go to get your money. They file bankruptcy. They say, we have more claims than we have money. We can't. We're just going to go out of business, or we're going to file bankruptcy. So you don't get any money. So these are major challenges that we're about to face big time. And we're seeing, and the question has been, can we afford that insurance? Now the question is, can we get that insurance? Even if we can't afford it, will somebody write on the property that I'm about to buy? So in many areas, we're seeing real estate contracts now being contingent on the ability of the buyer to obtain homeowners insurance. Something we never thought we'd see.
Yeah.
And without insurance, you can't obtain a loan. And Houston is at very high risk for flooding and wildfires. So we live in an area that is going to be impacted by this over time as much as probably anywhere.
Definitely something to pay attention to. Thank you, Bob. So let's talk about something I think is a little more fun, if you will.
Yeah, exactly.
Because HAR offers its members so many benefits. And I always hear from members, you guys offer so much, I don't even know what all you offer. But I'm curious from you, Bob, what are a few of your favorite HAR member benefits that we offer our members.
Well, let's look at some of them, of the more popular ones. Number one, INMA News. If you're not a member of HAR and you want to read INMA News every morning, which I encourage you to do, it costs you $200 a year. If you're a member of HAR, it doesn't cost you a penny. It's free. So read it, because everything that's happening in your industry is reported in INMA. Second thing is, Matrix is now in Spanish. So hats off to Sean and his team over there for making that happen. Why did we do that? Because 40% of, think about this, 40% of Houston families use Spanish as their language of choice. And 5,000 HR members have self-identified as speaking Spanish. So when almost half of your consumer base speaks Spanish, you better have that where they can access it. Next thing is, which I hope everybody has used, is Showing Smart. It was created with, and I think the thing that made it so successful was created with 100% member input. It wasn't the technology team creating to say, what do you think about it? It was ground up from the agent's opinions and thoughts to the technology team who created it. And then every week there's a meeting. Every single week there's a meeting. And they go over every comment that they get. And you know this, Christina, you're involved. They go over every comment they get from members about, do we change this or how do we make it better? So it's a constantly evolving product. And as of today, over 39,000 HR members have used it. And that's resulted in 800,000 confirmed showings, which blows my mind. For such a new product to have that kind of adoption is unbelievable. And HR's 11 largest brokers that represent a huge percent of the MLS inventory are either using it today as their exclusive showing service, or they're in the process of cutting over and doing so. And then one that I'm amazed at, and that's MLS Platinum. I remember when NAR told us a few years ago we had to charge for all these services that we included in the MLS fees. And we were like, no, we can't do that. We put them off for 2 years. And finally they just said, you're gonna be in trouble if you don't do it. So we did it. We thought maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 members would take advantage of it. Today, 18,000 plus members subscribe voluntarily to MLS Platinum. And why do they do that? Because they're getting $2,300 worth of value for $129. It's just that simple. I mean, if you can save, $2,150, why not? Yeah. And one example, so many of our members use Cloud CMA. If they went out and bought Cloud CMA without MLS Platinum, meaning they're a member of another MLS, they would pay $500 a year. So just that one thing, instead of paying $500, you pay $129, plus you get all the other benefits. And then the other big one is HR is the only MLS that I'm aware of to have created its own agent apps and broker apps for members and consumers, while many MLSs have paid $500,000 a year for an app. So it saves the members a lot of money, and it's and then the 800-pound gorilla is HR.com. And in October 2022, this October, imagine this, HAR had 7.7 million visitor sessions, while viewing member listings over 32 million times. So in 1 month, our member listings were looked at, the detail page, 32 million times, resulting in the main thing, 235,000 member leads. Now the problem is many of those leads are never responded to. And consumers are mad. We get calls every day. Why don't your members respond? What's wrong with them? It must be your site. Well, no, it's not our site. It's just the members, for whatever reason, don't respond to the leads. And we can see in the background what happens. And so we'll see consumer contacted agent A to see a listing, never got back, contacted agent B, bought it. I mean, maybe $1 million property. And then agent A, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, contacts the consumer and say, "Oh, by the way, are you still interested?" "No, I bought it from your competitor across the street." So they love to rub that in a little bit. So that's a shame that so many leads go unresponded to. But that
Absolutely.
I would think that's the major things that the members like.
We had a comment in the chat. I'll take them, please. Those unanswered
Yeah,
leads.
exactly.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And we had several members telling us about some of their favorite member benefits, similar to what you were saying: Matrix in Spanish, Showing Smart. They love the Spanish content. We have several platinum members that are tuned in, so they're loving what you're sharing this morning, Bob. So thank you for that.
Well, the good thing is so many members are active on the MLS task force and the technology task force, and so we get all this input. What do you need to do your business? We don't know, and so the members are great at saying, "Boy, if only we had this," and then we go either buy it or create it. And so it's a great teamwork at HR, just incredible.
Wonderful. So, Bob, this time of year, it tends to be busy, but maybe business tends to slow down towards the end of the year, maybe freeing up some time for our members. So, what are some things that members could be doing during this time of year when business does tend to be a little bit slower to prepare for next year?
Well, some of the things, maybe take some HR classes that you didn't have time to take before, like marketing courses or GRI. Formulate a business and marketing plan for 2023. How are you going to reach the consumers? What's the best way to spend that money? Not necessarily the way you always did it, but what are some new options to look at? Read the two things I read every morning that to me are just critical are Inma News and the Wall Street Journal. Those between those two, you're gonna be pretty up to date on everything that's going on. Spend time on HR.com and Zillow. I know that sounds stupid, but that's where the consumers are. They're on HR.com and Zillow every day. And if you don't know what they're looking at, how those work, you're at a disadvantage. I cannot go to a doctor, and I got a bunch of doctors. I can't go to a doctor that the very first thing they want to talk about is HR.com before they want to talk about what I'm there for.
Yeah.
So consumers love it. I mean, 7 million in a month. It gives you some idea. So, but you need to know what they're looking at. I know you go to Matrix and you need to do that, but don't only go to Matrix. Check out HR.com also. All right, and then market insights to keep current and past clients informed on the market around them. That always ends up being one of the most popular things we do is market insights by the members and the consumers. And use Remind to form and contact potential home sellers. Remind is a powerful tool. So those are just some of the things that you can do now that things are a little slower.
Okay, very good. So, again, moving into 2023, what are some new things that HR is considering in 2023?
Well, we're in one way or another going to add climate risk data to HR.com, and maybe it'll be as simple as a page about climate risk, and then a link to two websites where consumers can put in an address. They can put in the address of their cousin in Nebraska, and it'll tell them what are the odds of that flooding, having a heat wave, or wildfires, or whatever it may be. So we probably won't put it on every listing like Redfin has done, or Movoto's done, or Realtor.com's done. I know Zillow has not done it. They're nervous about, will the consumers and the realtors be upset? So we'll probably just make it generic. Number two, we're going to try to create more neighborhood video content for HR.com, just like CoStar is doing. Very, very smart. I mean, we know consumers want it. Probably add more comprehensive rental data. Again, that's the silver bullet that Zillow, Realtor, and CoStar are doing. In fact, apartments.com, as you know, is the number one apartment website in the country that's owned by CoStar, and it's only going to be in the future, starting probably January 1, on homes.com. And you wonder, well, what does it matter? Well, it matters because that was what Realtor.com used for a number of years. Their apartment source was apartments.com. I understand their contract's up and they won't be having access to it anymore. So now they're kind of in our same boat where you go to get it. Zillow's got great data. That may be one source we white label where no one would know is how they do with Zillow, but there's not a lot of real big options out there, So but that's one thing we've got to do. We're going to include down payment assistance information, like we have a matrix on HAR.com. And we found this app. It's an Alexa app called Lundy, and it helps people who are blind or visually impaired find homes. So basically, all of HR.com data would go into the app, and then if you can't see the computer, you can listen to it. You can ask it questions. It'll tell you about properties. So I think that would be a good thing. And then the big deal today is floor plans. And so we're going to look at finding floor plan creation solutions for agents that can be easily created and added to Matrix and HR.com. And it's something we have to do because that's the number 2 thing, according to NAR's recent survey, that consumers want to know. Right now, they see the pictures, they're beautiful pictures, many of which don't tell you anything about what the room is, which I can't believe an agent would put a beautiful picture on there and not tell me what it is. But a lot of them, that's one thing that really makes consumers mad. But they want to know what's the layout of the house. The pictures don't tell me that. So what Zillow's done, and I'm very envious of this, they've created a interactive floor plan. So when you go to take the picture, you create a virtual tour and a floor plan all at one time. And on the floor plan, the consumer can tap a room, and it'll bring up all the pictures or the virtual tour of that room. So it's very interactive, it's very cool, and it's free. So agents can use it. I mean, you could create it there and put it on HR.com also. So just being open with you, it's a pretty cool tool.
Wonderful. A lot of improvements that'll benefit the consumers and ultimately our members. There was some feedback coming in. They love the floor plan idea. And you're exactly right. A consumer can see a beautiful kitchen, but I want to see how the kitchen connects to the hallway and how that connects to the living room and all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it makes perfect
Fannie
sense.
Mae and some of the lenders are looking at or actually doing desktop appraisals where the appraiser never actually goes out to see the home. And one of the things that will facilitate that dramatically is the proper floor plan. That's going to be the key, because if we can provide that to the appraisal, that's going to cut way down on the time for an appraisal and probably the cost as well.
Okay, very good. I know there is a member task force that has been put together for the HAR CRM that has been discussed quite a bit. Do you know any current status there with the CRM, Bob?
I don't. I know they meet at least monthly or maybe more often, and the more ideas you have, the longer it takes to build it. So, and the problem is, if I show up at one meeting and say you ought to go left, and then you show up at the next meeting and say you ought to go right, the guys developing it, they're like, oh my gosh, we got to get on the same page here. But it's not easy to create from scratch a massive product like that. But they're working very hard. I mean, that's the way they did Showing Smart.
Yeah.
And it's turned out fantastic. So I have faith in them.
Yeah, and I do know that's one of their.
As far as when, I have no idea.
I do know that's one of their top priorities, but like you said, they're developing it along with members, which I think is wonderful. So it will benefit them. Great. So as we kind of wrap up here, I want to talk to you about your outlook again for 2023. You talked to us about what you anticipate as far as industry changes, but what about the housing market? What is your outlook for the housing market in 2023?
Well, let's look at some data that's just come out in the last few days. 1 in 5 Americans, 1 in 5 Americans have moved since COVID hit in March of 2020. Think about that. 20% of all Americans have moved since COVID hit in March of 2020. And of those who changed addresses in the last 2.5 years, 44% regret now moving to their current home. 44% are unhappy that they did it. So that's not a positive for the industry. 250, and this even makes it a little bit worse. 250,000 people who took out a mortgage this year to buy a home are now underwater, meaning they owe more on the loan than the home is worth. 250,000 people. 8% of all mortgages taken out this year are underwater. So that's 1 in 12 homes purchases in 2022 are worth less than owed on. It even gets worse. If you used a government financed mortgage like FHA or VA, 25% of those buyers are underwater. So when you combine 1 in 12 people have a home that's worth less than the loan, and 44% of the people are upset they bought the home they bought, that's scary for me, because they may think that gum realtor convinced me to buy that house, or why didn't they make me think about it? It's always, you got to blame somebody. You can't look in the mirror and say, boy, I've messed up. You
Right.
gotta blame somebody. And I have a feeling we'll be the logical target on that. Then you look at mortgage rates have climbed above 7% to a 20-year high in October and November. And I remember buying properties when the interest rates were 18%. And now they go to 7%, and everybody freaks out. Well, I guess you would if it was 2% just a little while ago.
Right.
But existing home sales have dropped for 9 straight months in a row through October, the longest streak in the history since NAR has been tracking homes. But at the same time, home prices soared 45% between January and June of this year. Rents have also soared, even though they're starting now to come back. And then next year's predictions for home prices and home sales are unusually varied according to different economists. So it's not like, okay, we know it's going to be this or this or this. KPMG, an audit and consulting firm, is calling for prices to fall 20% next year. Goldman Sachs forecasts a 7.5% drop. NAR is forecasting a 1.2% increase in existing home prices. So you go from a 20% drop to a 1.2% increase. There's a big spread there. And the mortgage bankers see prices up 0.7% next year. So my point to you is nobody has a clue. I mean, everybody's just kind of shooting in the dark. And real estate agents are saying unless people have to sell their home due to a life event like job relocation or divorces, they're staying put. When 70% of households with mortgages have rates below 4%, they don't want to sell that house and move into a home where they're paying nearly 7% interest rate. So it's like the perfect storm of why things are not moving. Now, the good news is Lawrence Yun, the chief economist for NAR, predicts a strong rebound in 2024 with an increase of 10% in home sales and a 5% increase in the national median home price. So, that's the good news, 2024. And if you look at November 2022 compared to November of 2018, sales are down 6%, pendings are up 6%, and the median price is up 41%. So we can't compare anything to 2020 and 2021. Those were just outliers. I mean, you just can't compare to that. You got to go back to 2018, 2019. And if you do so, we're not, it's not as bad as people think if you compare it to the right one. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've got to share.
Thank you. So we're nearing the end of our time with Bob this morning. So if you have any questions for him, now is the time. Please type them in and we will get to as many as we can. We're going to take a quick look at a video from this week's sponsor, Artavia, a new home community in Conroe. Let's take a look at this quick video and then we'll talk to Bob a little bit more. Thank you again to Artavia for sponsoring this week's program. We did have just a couple other comments coming in. A lot of people thanking you, Bob. So much great information that you're sharing this morning. Susan asked, do you have any of this in written form that we can have? Bob, can you tell us a little bit about your newsletter that goes out every week?
Yeah. So if you don't want to read Emma News in the Wall Street Journal every day, if you'll Friday morning at 10 o'clock read my Insights newsletter, because every day I do research and I pick what I think are the most valuable articles about real estate. It could be about climate change, could be about COVID, could be about technology. Typically it's about the market and the industry. And there's 6 articles in there. And Christina told me, and Matt the other day, who's head of communications, that 27,500 members read that every Friday. I was like, Matt, that's impossible. 27,500 of our members have never done anything like that. But that's the truth. So it's been very popular, and yeah, everything I've talked about is in that newsletter. So, and they're all available. I think going back, you can get them. So read them on Friday. The last thing I say is have a wonderful holiday. Be with family and friends and enjoy and get ready for a wild and crazy ride in 2023.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you again so much for your time this morning. And yes, you can find that newsletter in your inbox every Friday right around 10 a.m. I look forward to it every week, Bob. I'm sure a lot of our members do. Actually, Kimberly Barnes just said it's a great newsletter. I look forward to it weekly. So there you go. So that is actually it for this Member Focus Monday, and this is our last Member Focus Monday of 2022. So as Bob said, we want to wish you all a very safe and happy holiday season. We will be back on January 9th with 2023 HAR Chair of the Board, Kathy Trevino, who is going to be installed as our Chair of the Board later this week. But so we will be back with her on January 9th. Again, this is our last program of the year, so we hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. Stay safe, stay warm. It's warm outside right now, but that's okay. And we will see you back on January 9th. Bob, thank you again so much for your leadership and for your time this morning.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. Bye. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay.